I'm using a peg from my warping board, so it's varnished and it's smooth. And on it, I have marked a 1-inch space with Sharpie. The space between the lines is 1 inch. The lines are outside of the inch. And then I taped my yarn another inch or so to the side. And now I'm going to wind on a bunch of yarn. I'm not pulling it tight, I'm just winding it. And then I will shove it down and wind some more. Until I've covered, let's see, I've covered the space from where I started to beyond the marked inch. And now I'm going to tape the other end out here a little ways. So that's not tight there. So there's room to slide those loops of yarn around. All right, I'm taping it because it's a fool's game to try to hold on to the yarn while also measuring it and everything else. So now I can move these yarns around on here. I can move them out of the way of the inch, if I can get them over the tape, which I can. So there's a bunch outside on that side, there's a bunch outside, and I can manipulate just how many are inside the inch. So what I like to do is push them together until they're about as dense as I expect them to fall on the warping board when I'm actually winding the warp, because that's usually a pretty good indicator of your set. So there. So intuitively, that's what I have got. So now I find the black lines. There's one. And then the other black line. There. Now it's okay now if these things move around a little bit, because I know they're the ones I want to count. And there's 5, 10, 12. That to me seems like a pretty good set for twill. So how to be a little more scientific and not quite so intuitive about it, because yeah, we've all been there. Oh, just, use your best guess. Ha. When you don't have any experience to base your best guess on, then you're just shooting in the dark. So, another slightly more scientific way to do this is to space them out so that there is the same amount of space in between each yarn as the yarn itself. So the yarn is taking up half of the space. Oh, here, let me get that in focus. This looks pretty good on this side. It's too crowded on this side. So I'm going to move some of those outside the lines. That looks okay. If I bring one more in there, it would sit right on that black line. And, if your fingers are too big for this maneuver, you can use a blunt needle or something to move stuff around. You can even take another piece of the yarn and put it in there and say, yep, that's the right size. All right, so I had that the way I thought looked good. And then this one crept in there. It's on the black line, so we're not going to count it because that would be part of the next inch. And here in this space, there are 8 wraps. 8. This is a good set, or at least a good starting place for a set for a balanced plain weave. If you leave the same amount of space between the yarns as the thickness of the yarn itself. It's the same idea as filling the space, counting it, and then using half the numbers, because you're leaving out every other one of those things, which is supposed to be space for the yarn. So let's see. Do I have 16 now that I have them packed together? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Oh, I do. It's like I know what I'm doing. Okay, so there's 16. So again, 8 would be a good set for this yarn in a balanced plain weave. If I was going to do it in twill, I'd want to use about half again as much. So another 4, 12 EPI. And remember, that was the number I came up with first, 12. If you're doing an upholstery, you want to make it much closer. If you really want the fabric to be open and bloom, if you are using a wool or animal hair fiber, then you could make it even more widely spaced than 8. So you're going to adjust that set according to the purpose of your fabric and the behavior of your yarn, but that's a good place to start.